Hello. Hi, everyone. Welcome. Welcome. We'll wait just a few moments, allow some other folks to join us. Hello. Great. Well, hello and welcome. Thank you so much for joining us this evening for our Facebook Live Family Workshop. Let me introduce myself. My name is Stephanie Tronto, and I'm a program director with Springboard Collaborative. If this is your first time uh, with us, joining us for our live Facebook workshops, let me tell you a little bit about Springboard. Springboard is a literacy nonprofit that helps educators to help families to become at-home reading coaches. One of the ways that we do this is by hosting family workshops just like this one. In our workshops, we help family members and students focus on a reading tip, and then they practice that reading tip together. This week, we're going to be working on a workshop, or we're working on a tip called Take a Word to the Shop. And in this workshop, we will be focusing on questions that you can ask your child after they are done reading to help them review their vocabulary. And we can take a word to the shop or the workshop. And we'll be using tools from our tool belts to break apart this word. When children practice breaking the word down into sounds and or adding sounds and breaking sounds apart can really help them to understand and build their vocabulary and build their word knowledge. And they'll be practicing thinking of synonyms and using it in a sentence. Okay. So today we'll be talking about those words and building your child's vocabulary after we're done reading. So we'll practice this by taking a word into an imaginary workshop. Inside the workshop, we can do 4 things to a word. First, we will use a saw to take it apart sound by sound. Then we'll use a hammer to add something new to it. We call these things suffixes, like ing, and prefixes like pre or pre. Then we'll use a paintbrush and think of a word that is close to the same meaning, just a different color, like clean and spotless. They mean almost the same thing, just one is a shade more intense. And finally, we'll use a screwdriver to attach the word to the other words in a sentence. And why do we do this? It's always important to know the why. In order to grow as a reader, a child must be able to read and understand many words to expand their vocabulary. Talking about words is a great way to build your child's vocabulary and the number of words that they know and can recognize in reading, and then use in speaking and writing. We want you to remember that at Springboard, the most important thing we want you to leave these workshops with is to always ask questions. Asking your child questions before, during, and after reading is an easy way to coach them to improve their reading. Today we will focus on the questions you ask in the after part. And we're going to learn a fun thing that you can do with these words and taking them to the workshop that will help your child to learn more about how words are put together. So for the first step or the first tool we'll use, we're going to use a saw, and we're going to use a saw like one you would saw with wood to take apart a word. And the word that we're going to practice with is misled. It's a little light, but misled. Here are some of the questions we might ask. So you can do this after your child has finished reading a book or a passage, and you can choose any word that they've read. It can be a word that they know, a word that they needed help to decode. If you use our workshop that we talked about last week, I'll coach you through this word to help figure it out. This would be a great word to use, but you can pick any word from the book and you can talk about it after they're done reading. So I chose the word misled. And here are some of the questions that I might ask when we're talking about misled. What are the sounds of this word? If I use my saw and I chop up each part of this word, what are the sounds? I might even break it down just to each basic letter, the M, I, the S sound for the S, and have my child do each individual word. You can also ask if they see any smaller words inside of this word. This helps our children use their decoding skills when they're looking at this to figure out an unknown word. So I might even be able to cover up the I, M, and S in this word, and I might be able to see lead or even miss. And so I can find words within this word. I can also talk about what if we took off a word, right? What if we took off a D? What if we took off the M? What kind of word would that make? And sometimes nonsense words are okay because we want them to practice the sound. So we want them to even be able to identify that that's not a word that they've heard before or even a real word. The second tool that you're going to use is a hammer. You'll use a hammer to add a new ending or a new beginning to a word. So you might use the same word, misled, and you might say, what if we added a suffix on the end? What if we added a suffix on the end like ION? Would that make a word? What about if we added a prefix like unmisled? Is that a word? What would that sound like? You, can we make any compound words with this word? And these are all questions that you can use when you think about the tool or taking it to the workshop, the hammer. What can we add to the end or the beginning of this word? The third tool that you can use when you take a word to the workshop is a paintbrush. And we're going to use a paintbrush to find a word in another color. So you might look at, again, our sample word of misled and think, what is a synonym or a word that means almost the same thing as misled? Well, I might say misled could also be a similar word for lie, right? What one is maybe more intense, one is maybe purposeful, whereas one is accidental, right? We can talk about the differences between those synonyms or what word might mean the same thing as the chosen word. The fourth tool that you're going to use in your workshop, in your word workshop, is a screwdriver. And you're going to use a screwdriver to attach it to other words. Now we're going to use misled and we're going to think, how can we use this in a sentence? I might use it in a sentence if I said, I misled my mom when I told her that my room was clean, right? Another question you could ask is, can you make a sentence it would definitely not fit in? I might even say, I was misled when I put on my red shirt today. Did I use that word correctly? And now we can have a conversation about it. That is not what Miss Led meant. Let's try it again in a different way, right? So remember, today's reading tip is to use your tools and take a word to the workshop. You can use a saw to take apart the word. You can use a hammer to add a new beginning or ending. You can use a paintbrush to think of a word in a different color. And you can use a screwdriver to attach it to other words. I hope that you practice this reading tip at home with your child this week and you use your tools in your toolbox to think about words to expand your child's vocabulary and the words that they're familiar with, and really play with the sounds and the beginnings and endings as a way to engage in conversations and asking questions before, during, and after your reading. Thank you for joining us for this workshop. My colleague Ureni will be on later this evening at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time for this same workshop in Spanish. So if you know anybody or you yourself may benefit from hearing this information also presented in Spanish, please do join us. Please follow us on Facebook. You may already if you're watching this video. Also, we are on Instagram and Twitter. We love interacting with our families and teachers and our social media pages. And next week, we will be back on Thursday at 6 p.m. for our workshop titled Dear Character. And we'll jump into that workshop then. Until then, please remember to use this week's reading tip of taking your word to a workshop, to the shop. Use your saw to take apart the word. Use your hammer to add a new beginning and ending sound. Use your paintbrush to think of a word in a different color, and use your screwdriver to attach it to other words. Have fun, ask questions.